Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to December with the Market Mystics.
This year's gone so quickly.
It feels
I know
like
this is very cliche. Isn't it so cliche to talk about that? But it just has.
Yeah.
We were scrolling back through some of our episodes from season 3, which has been the majority of this year. And it doesn't seem like that long ago. I don't know.
Funny. I almost had the opposite response because I was looking through and just noticing some of the interviews we did. And I was like, that feels like almost a different life ago.
Wow.
So it's interesting how time is to some extent relative.
I would say to a lot of extent relative.
That's fair.
Okay. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's some things that are the same for everyone, like, 60 minutes in an hour. But yeah, the way you perceive time is totally about what's going on in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about this for a second. This is not planned, but I want to talk about this. I actually think it is so relative. I think that like the clock is the measuring stick. Like, yeah, we use 60 minutes as a way to measure how much time has passed. But I've had experiences where I would call it rich time. Where, for instance, this is a very specific example. My sister and I used to go and sit on the front steps of our old church that we had, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, but it was probably 8 or 9 years ago that we would do this. We would go sit on the steps of this church and pray and talk and spend time. And there was probably 5 or 6 times where we went and we spent, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 hours there. And when we left, only like 20 minutes had passed. And it was like, what? There's no way we could have done all of these things in that amount of time. But it was like, the clock said that, but there was something else going on with time.
Yeah.
Like, I think it stretches and constricts sometimes for our benefit, sometimes not for our benefit, but
I had a very real experience with that with 2 other people with me. There was 3 people with me, or 3 people total. I was driving back and forth from where we were staying to an event we were at, and we had it was like day 3 of this event. We had been driving at least once or twice a day every day. We knew it took 15 minutes or 14 or whatever. It was like 14 or 15 minutes. We knew that's how long it took to get from where we were staying to where the event was. And we left with it was like 8 minutes until the event started. And we're like, oh man, that's a bummer. We're going to be a few minutes late. It's like, okay, no big deal. And we got there with 2 minutes to spare. And we're not speeding. We're not just, it was just the normal drive. And it was like, all of us got out of the car and was like, how did that just happen? There's no way we should be here on time, but we are on time. And so I think it's really fun that sometimes you can experience rich time. I've also had days where I felt like I was experiencing poor time, where you just look at the clock and all of a sudden it's the next day. But
yes. But also, do you know what? I think as humans operating in this world, this realm, this dimension, whatever, I think we really try to define and get a grasp of things, which is why
Hmm.
we have a clock to tell us what time it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I tend to believe that time is a substance that can't actually fit into that box. Because, I mean, think about even when you're a kid, someone telling you to wait for 15 minutes seems like an eternity.
Yeah.
But to the person saying it, it's really like, hold on a moment,
Hmm.
you know? And I just think it's so interesting how, yes, we're all functioning in this world and in the same time, but it just stretches and contracts differently for us depending on what we're doing, um, and how we need it to work. And, sometimes I do think there's an ability to partner with it and work with time so that it works for your benefit as opposed to you working against it,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. I think if you are choosing to live under the sun in this dimension in a very fleshly, worldly way, time functions in the way we've constructed time to function.
Mhm.
But like in your experience of going to sit on the church steps and pray or engage heaven or just be near God by doing that, you're, I would say, to some extent, taking a percentage of your body out of this realm, um, where time does not function the same way. And um, yeah, I think that that's like, I think that's a big piece of it is where you choose to be located. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about there was a meditation I did a while ago on um it was a meditation on healing and also like long life and longevity type of meditation. And the in the meditation it was a guided meditation and it would have you sit and think about your life in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, like progressively longer and longer. Um, and imagining yourself sitting in that position, how do you want to feel? And so would have you like flex your muscles and like feel strong and healthy, um, because what you're doing is informing your current nervous system that that is what the expectation is for 20 years from now. Because
Mhm.
generally we have this idea of like death and decay. So when we think about 20 years from now, we think about a worse scenario. So we are informing our nervous system to take us to that worst scenario. And so by spending time focusing on that future place and informing our current nervous system where to take us, it was a way of, uh, I think it's a way of bending time. Like you are, you're stepping outside of, you're stepping outside of what we normally experience as time. And I think that can be a really powerful way to position yourself outside of time.
For sure. I think because also you get yourself into a position where you're not necessarily ruled by time,
Mm,
and it's not your lord, it's not the one that has the final say. And sometimes I think when you get yourself in line that way, right? So, like you were saying, engaging heaven or something, like when I'm going and I'm spending time with the Lord or with the Father, and time falls in line with what we're doing instead of us having to come to how it is passing, I suppose. it's uh, kind of aligning that a bit more. Like
Mm.
it's not the Lord, you know what I mean? Like it's not the thing that has the final say. And so whatever it is that I need to be doing or that I am doing, or I'm even just enjoying, even if I'm just soaking, you know, then it kind of falls in line with that's happening. And this is why I think it's such an interesting thing, because I don't know that it's actually like some set law, um how time passes. I think we subject ourselves to it, and when we do that, we succumb to how it flows, I suppose.
Mm.
But I think also there's very much the ability to put it in a different hierarchy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about time flowing. I'm going to butcher this if anyone's like a scientist, but I was listening to this person talk about, they were talking about the speed of light, um, and how it shrinks distances to be able to be at the speed of light or travel at the speed of light. So one of the things they were talking about was like the um, the CERN super collider ring is something like 27 kilometers around or something around there. However, for the atom that is traveling around that, because it's traveling at, I think they said like 0.98% the speed of light or something like that. Um, for that atom that's traveling around, the ring feels as if it's only 4 kilometers
Hmm.
in distance because traveling at that traveling near the speed of light bends reality into such a way that it makes distance feel different. And then they were talking about how like if you wanted to travel to outside of the Milky Way to the nearest galaxy, that it would take like I forget what it was, like 2 million years to travel that far. Um, but for you as the thing traveling there, it would only maybe feel like a few months. But 2 million years would have passed on Earth. And it was kind of like, I'm still like really processing it because it bends my mind to think about how that works because I've just experienced time for my whole life as in this place, but time everywhere else functions somewhat different. Time at every speed functions somewhat different. And so I really just started thinking about like immortality and long life and how like time is also very relative depending on your size. Um, and I'm like, that's it's so trippy to like really like get into this just because it's such a different mindset. But I was like, this is like, I think this is part of the key to living a very long life is learning how to position differently, learning how to be a different size, learning how to travel at a different speed. Like I'm thinking about there's so many near death experiences or people who have had encounters in heaven and it's like, oh my gosh, I had this encounter in heaven and I was in heaven for 4 years and I came back and it had actually only been 40 minutes on earth. um and I'm like, yeah, you somehow bent time because you were outside of time and space, of how we experience time and space. And whether that's you're a different size or whether that's you're traveling at a different speed, I don't know the science of it, but I know there's something to it. Like there's enough accounts of that that I feel like it has to be some validity to it.
For sure. Again, I don't know that we have it all figured out with
Definitely not.
time. I mean, I was going to bring up too, I had also been thinking about the concept of immortality and really, I don't know that we can even get a handle on time at this point, but I
Mm,
think even realizing that it's not a law so much as something that like almost like a substance, you know what I mean?
mm,
And so many people, I've said this before, like, oh, the most limited resource that you have in a lifetime is time, right? I would say similarly, I do think it tends to be something that mm, you need to be intentional about how you spend it. But also, I don't know that it has to be limited. And I think that is one of those things that it's that belief that then makes it limited. And if you also really start turning yourself to believe that maybe it isn't as limited as we think it is, or we've been told that it is, I think there's really something to that. And um, I don't even know that you have to understand time completely. I think you just probably need to have it in its right place.
sure.
Yeah.
Mm,
Also, you know what I want to talk about quickly? We were going to talk about, I mean, this has gone somewhere completely different than what we planned on, but we were going to talk about, like, touch on some topics that we have done this season from previous episodes. But I want to touch on one that was, I think, season 2 that you cannot get your hands on anymore. We had to take down an
oh yeah,
episode,
yeah, yeah.
and it was about time travel. So kind of interesting that we're talking about time, and kind of interesting that we're planning to talk about like just retouch on some past
Hmm.
episodes. Our friend Camille was on, and she has some credentials that her state she resides in didn't like her claiming on the podcast. So we had to take the episode down, which was totally fine. And we love her and it's fine.
Hmm.
Um, but we did have a really interesting conversation about time travel
Yeah.
in that
Like,
episode.
especially in regards to healing,
Uh-huh.
which is also interesting because we were just like, I brought up time travel in regards to like, I guess sort of in a way healing, although I mean I was using it more for like longevity, but I think that it works the same for healing. Like to some extent, if you want to be healed and have a better life, you first have to believe that it's possible. So if you want to believe for extreme longevity in life, you first have to get your nervous system believe it's possible. If you want to get healed in life, your nervous system has to believe it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think I'll say this about time travel because we haven't really talked about it in any other episodes, I don't think. You remember talking
Yeah.
about it
I
again?
feel maybe it's come up once or twice in a small sentence, but I don't know that we've talked about it a lot.
Sure. I think time travel is far more doable and accessible than you think it is. And I think people probably already are experiencing it with not even realizing they are.
Mm,
Um, I have come to the realization, and I firmly believe this, that when you um, go into a memory and you reminisce and you picture the things that were happening and you hear the sounds that were happening and you are feeling the things that were happening, you are like literally, very literally, I'm not using that word out of context. You are literally placing yourself back into a different time and reliving it. You are actually reliving that memory. And, but in regard to healing, it's a very helpful tool that if you have a trauma, for you to be able to go back there as a third party observer, even, um, you may still be feeling the things, but go back even with the Lord or with someone who uh is trustworthy to you, you know? And I mean, essentially like ask the Lord, "Hey, where were you in this? When this big trauma was happening, where were you in this room?" And kind of relive it from a different perspective. And there's a lot of healing that can happen from that. Also, if you just go back to experience these things to get hurt again, you'll get hurt again. There's some intentionality that needs to come with that. But it's an interesting thing because people are already doing this and we act like it's something that is so far out of reach and so very sci-fi. And yet
Mm.
we do it all the time. But I think we can do the same with the future. Like, how many people, how many prophets have you known that have seen the future and it comes to fruition? I think there's some manifesting that happens. There's some visualization that happens that can really make that happen. But also, you go place yourself in that in the future and you smell the things and you hear the things and you feel the things. What do you think is actually happening in your whole being?
Mhm.
You're actually experiencing that other time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that your body, mind does not know the difference between like imagination, remembering, and what's actually happening. Um, and so when you are, like you said, like going back and reminiscing on something, like there is part of you chemically that is reliving that event.
Mhm.
Maybe not fully, but there's some level of your body that is reliving that event. And so, like, yeah, it's very powerful to like, it's very powerful. Like, whether or not you're using it to relive trauma or whether or not you're using it um, to build a better life or to heal from things, like, it just is a powerful thing. And I think that it is very much so um, a form of time travel. And maybe, like you said, it's not maybe not in the way that we imagine or Hollywood depicts time travel, but is very much so a way of time travel.
You don't have to like get in the DeLorean and go 88 miles per hour,
Yeah.
right? Like
I mean, that can't hurt, but yeah, you don't have to.
it couldn't hurt. Have I told you this? I love this. So I talk about Illy all the time. She's 8 and she just is, she's an explorer. That's what I'll say. If I told you this, Josh, did I tell you this recently?
I do know this. Yes.
Okay, well, she has been convinced for, I don't know, a couple of years at least. She told me about this. So it didn't come from me, but she's been convinced that if she can run at a certain speed, she will be able to time travel.
Fully believe it.
I know. And it's 8 miles per hour. And so she often will have me go outside with her and we'll go in the front yard and she will practice running and like try to get up to 8 miles per hour to see if she's time traveled. And it is, I just have to tell you, it's the best thing ever. Like, I love it because she will like make her run. She'll turn around. She'll be like, "Mom, did I do it? Like, what day is it? What time is it right now?"
I love
And
that.
she's got to check it. And I love it. I love it because she's not like bound by the restrictions of what someone has told her is possible or isn't possible,
Mm,
which also makes me believe that it will be more possible for her because she doesn't believe she can't.
mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I love
I
it.
love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Mm. Well, listeners, I know humans have run faster than 8 miles an hour, so it's got to be possible. So get out there and try it.
Oh, that's funny. I do wonder where the 8 miles per hour came from.
I don't know, but I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that she had 8 and the DeLorean had 88. Like, I think that's interesting.
I don't know, but hers isn't in a car. Hers has to do with running. It's not like
Yeah.
on her bike. So she's not trying to get to 8 miles per hour on her bike. She's trying to get to 8 miles per hour on foot.
I bet she could get close.
Probably.
You should, I did this on vacation one time and it was a lot of fun. We were walking down the road and there was one of those like slow down zone things where the sign had a radar on it. And so my
Mhm.
whole family took turns running to see who could get the highest number on the radar gun. And I don't remember what our high scores were. But if you could find one of those, I bet it would blow her mind to see the 8 on there.
That's true. That's true. Okay, I'll see what I can find.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you guys for sticking with us for this whole year. I can't believe it's already December. Time is a very interesting thing. And I'm glad we had this conversation.
Agreed. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.